Now, before we get into this, if you watched my last video, you would know I said the next one would be a special video, kind of a celebration for 1,000 subscribers. That's not this one. We're almost there. I just had to tweak that video so many times, start and restart, so just give me some time on that. But for now, enjoy the Vinland Saga Season 1 summary. In a small Icelandic village, in the year 1002, Thor Snorrason lives peacefully with his family, having secretly deserted his role as a captain in a Danish fleet 15 years earlier.
He was the best fighter they had.
The former Viking now lives an honest lifestyle with his wife Helga, his daughter Ylva, and his son Thorfinn. One day, the family find a runaway slave buried beneath a pile of snow, and though they can't nurse him back to health, they at least help him regain consciousness. Thor manages to save the slave from his owner Halfdan's wrath, who came looking for him in the village, by trading him 8 sheep in return for his life.
He dies anyways.
Soon after, another unexpected surprise arrives, as the legendary Jomsvikings land at the village asking for one of their former battalion commanders, Thors the Troll. Thors invites his former comrade Floki into his home, where the Viking informs him that their entire fleet will align with the Danes in their upcoming invasion of England. Left with little choice but to abide by Floki's call to war, for fear of what may happen to his village should he decline. Following the news of war on the horizon, a few of the young villagers are eager to prove themselves in battle, whereas Thorfinn searches for a weapon to be able to join the fight himself. Though his father intervenes, after hearing how he's been playing a little too rough with the other village kids, and after trying to tell his son it's never right to kill anyone, Thorfinn doesn't believe him and runs away in a huff. The next day, Thor prepares to leave with a few youngsters from his village, and the merchant, Leif Erikson, the first man to discover America.
True story. And the land he discovered he would call Vinland. Too bad we barely hear about it this season.
Near Iceland, on the Faroe Islands, Floki commissions a mercenary by the name of Asharad to kill Thors, which he gladly accepts after some haggling over the price. Back in Iceland, Thors and his small crew embark on their journey, though the former Viking is shocked to find his son has snuck onto the ship. After being mesmerized by the sea, his father gives him a spanking. Then Thors tells his young crewmate Ari how he began to fear the battlefield when his daughter was born, which led to him deserting his former life. The crew then arrive to the Faroe Islands, and Leif feels something is off, though before he and Thors can turn their ships around, they are trapped in the fjord by Asharad's crew. As Asharad approaches with his ships, Thors arms himself for the first time in 15 years, and he gives Thorfinn his dagger to use as a last defensive resort. Then, Thors leaps a tremendous distance to land on the enemy's ship, and easily knocks out most of the crew on board with his bare hands, before he is faced by Asharad's right-hand man, Bjorn. Bjorn eats a berserker mushroom to boost his strength, though Thors makes a fool of the monstrous Viking without even touching his sword. With archers above and his crew outnumbered, Thors challenges their leader Asharad to a duel. If Asharad wins, he will be able to do as he wishes with the crew, but if Thors wins, Asharad promises to withdraw his men. Though he proves a formidable foe, he's still no match for the Troll of Yom, whose relentless attacks and overwhelming strength are too much for Asharad to handle. But he refuses to honor the terms of the duel, as Bjorn threatens Thorfinn's life if Thors doesn't let his captain go. Thors deduces that Floki is the one who paid these mercenaries to take his head, and in order to save his son and crewmates, he tosses his sword into the water.
Is that something to do with why he said this?
Then, Asharad gives his archers the signal, and seconds later, the Troll of Yom is shot full of arrows. This time, Asharad honors his word and lets the others live, and Leif is instructed by Thors to take his head to the leader of the Jomsvikings, in order to spare the village their wrath should they think he deserted again. Thorfinn cries over the death of his father, though soon his sadness turns to rage towards Asharad. He ends up stranded on the ship the pirates took from the villagers, and he vows to kill Asharad with a scary amount of resolve. The Vikings leave him to die on his own. Then when they land on English soil, they plunder a village, and Thorfinn finds Asharad when he's sleeping, but can't bring himself to kill him in such a cowardly way.
He wasn't really sleeping.
The next day, Thorfinn challenges Asharad to a duel, but a 6-year-old has little chance against a trained mercenary. Then he begins to practice with his father's dagger, which is much more suited to him. After a good deal of practice, he challenges him again, but fails despite his improvement. Then Asharad tells him that if he proves himself on the battlefield, he will reward him with another duel. Back in Iceland, Leif breaks the bad news to Helga and Ylva, and promises to find Thorfinn and bring him home, no matter how many years it takes.
Ylva tries to put on a brave face, but it doesn't hold for long.
Ashadad's crew is hired by the Danish army to fight the English, and Thorfinn tags along to prove himself. One night, they are ambushed in the forest, and Thorfinn kills his first human, and screams in horror afterwards. Though in the following years of constant assaults, the youngster continues to prove himself on the battlefield, with his single and later double dagger style. One day, in the year 1008, after being chased away on a solo scouting mission, he is found washed ashore by an English mother and her daughter. He repays their kindness by signaling his crew to raid their village, and though he told them to run away, when their mother sees this 12-year-old boy murdering soldiers in front of her, she can't help but cry.
But she was probably murdered.
In the winter of 1012, the fighting in England comes to a halt, so Ashadad's crew, being the mercenaries they are, head to France to pick a side in a local skirmish.
Fun fact, this is where the manga begins.
The crew almost single-handedly take down a fortress themselves. Then before the Franks they sided with can turn on them, they escape with all the treasure, leaving the fortress to them. The crew then return home to Denmark, where they are afforded some time to rest in the village of Ashadad's uncle Gorm. Thorfinn, having proven himself enough in the past 10 years, is granted a duel by Ashadad, and he shows just how much his skills have improved after living a life of battle. Though his emotions get the better of him when Ashadad mocks his father, and he's beaten again. Then as the rest of the men party through the night, the youngster stays on the ship, alone with his thoughts.
And then he tells his slave girl about Vinland, where the fires of war cannot reach.
The following summer, the Danish king joins the invasion of England with a massive fleet, and things go fairly smoothly until they reach London in October of 1013. The English have a Viking named Thorkel the Tall fighting for them, and he causes trouble for the Danes at the Battle of London Bridge. Thorfinn approaches the bridge alone to take Thorkel's head, so he can earn another duel with Ashadad, but he's caught by the monstrous Viking and thrashed around. Though he earns his respect for his skill and persistence, before he cuts off 2 of his enemy's fingers and escapes. After the day's defeat, King Sweyn of Denmark decides to move on to capture the rest of England, whilst leaving 4,000 men and his son Canute to take London.
Let me just tell you now, this prince ain't doing shit.
If you're wondering where the King of England is, he already fled to Normandy.
Pussy.
So, most of the soldiers move on to Wessex with Thorfinn joining them. Then as he and the crew split off from the army to plunder, Ashadad tells him of the Roman and Celtic history of England, the history of his ancestors.
From his mother's side.
This is a really good scene. You should watch it.
They then receive word that Thorkel and 500 of his men defeated the 4,000 men laying siege to London and captured Prince Canute, so they decide to go and claim the prince for themselves.
Oh, well, he just chopped the Danish soldier's head off, so...
They stumble upon a fight between Thorkel's men and the remainder of the London siege force, and in the confusion, Thorfinn manages to save the prince and bring him back to Ashadad.
Though Thorkel kinda let him go.
And apparently he knows his father and mother.
Then it becomes a race to the king's main forces between Ashadad's crew and Thorkel's men, with the latter gaining on the former quickly. Though Ashadad manages to get word to some Welsh allies of his, who help them cross over to Wales, thereby losing Thorkel's men for the time being. Ah, the beauty of Wales. What? How'd that get there? Well, you might as well do what it says and like and subscribe, please. And then comment on if this worked or not. Back to the video. Ashadad announces to his troops that they will head to their destination of Gainsborough by land rather than sea, something the prince's babysitter Ragnar is not too happy about. On their way, they face some troubles from the neighboring Welsh kingdom, but manage to make it through thanks to Ashadad's clever diplomacy.
Helped by the fact that he's descended by Roman Celts on his mother's side.
Hey, you actually got this pussy prince to talk for once. Nice, Thorfinn.
As the harsh winter snow begins to plummet down on the crew, they find a small Christian village and take their food. Then they round up every man, woman, and child, and slaughter them, much to the horror of the Christian prince and his vassal priest. Unfortunately for them, one young girl manages to slip away unnoticed, and she gets word out, which eventually reaches Thorkel's ears, who continues his pursuit of the prince. When Ashadad realizes they've been discovered, he prepares his men to leave, but not before he puts part of his grand plan into place. He leads Ragnar away from the king with a lie, and has his men stab him in the back. Then Ragnar makes Ashadad promise to protect Canute with his life. He then tells him that King Sweyn is looking to kill the prince, due to a split in 2 factions in Denmark over his successor. Some prefer Canute, some prefer his older brother Harold, and the king would rather kill one of his sons than have the kingdom split in 2.
Damn. That's harsh.
Ashadad tells Canute that Ragnar died valiantly fighting the English, and the prince now has to live in a world without the only man who loved him. When they learn Thorkel and his men are on their tail, Asherad has to not only deal with a spoiled, cowardly prince, but deserters from his crew.
Yeah, Thorkel kills them for being such cowards anyways.
As he continues to march with the remainder of his crew, Asherad smells the end of his leadership is near, and before his men have a chance to revolt, he sets up an escape plan with Bjorn, Thorfinn, and the prince, and the drunken priest. With Thorkel the Tall on their ass, the soldiers turn on their leader after years of following him, and plan to take the prince to their pursuers as a prize. But after Asherad says he's always hated them, and that they Danes are worse than pigs, he attacks, and Bjorn takes that cue to put their escape into action. Asherad stands his ground against his former 50-odd allies, but after they shoot his legs full of arrows, his fight is over. Then, much to the crew's surprise, Thorkel orders his men to kill them all, and Thorfinn returns to save his prey Asherad from the clutches of the tall Viking. Thorkel is excited to face the son of the only man who is stronger than him, and the youngster manages to slice him up pretty good, but one good hit from Thorkel sends him flying like a soccer ball. Nearby, Bjorn takes out the prince's pursuers with the use of a berserker mushroom, whilst Canute dreams of the final goodbye he never got to say to Ragnar. When he awakens from his dream, he has a talk with the drunken priest about what love truly is.
I don't get it either.
And through it, the fog is lifted from his mind, and he finds his resolve to lead.
He no longer seeks the salvation of God, but wants to build his own paradise. Or something.
When Thorfinn comes to, he finds his arm shaped a little differently than before, but Thorkel rewards him for his entertainment with the story of his father. Nicknamed the Troll, Thors was the top commander in the Jomsviking fleet, and their leader Sigvaldi rewarded him with the marriage to his daughter Helga.
Thorkel is Sigvaldi's younger brother, which makes him Thorfinn's great uncle.
Thorkel thought Thors had died at the Battle of Hjörungavágr in Norway, but he caught him sneaking Helga and his daughter out of the Jomsvikings base soon after. Thorkel was upset after he learned of the Troll's intention to leave the Jomsvikings, but after he was knocked out by him, he never saw him again. Once the Viking finishes his story, Asherad helps Thorfinn devise a way to beat him, and with a bright strategy, Thorfinn manages to gouge out one of his eyes. Thorkel is furious when his men intervene, but before any more blood can be spilt, Canute arrives to stop the fighting. He tells Thorkel that he has no value as a hostage, because the king is hoping for his quiet death, and he wins him over with his newfound resolve. Then Asherad reveals that he killed Ragnar, and tells him to either kill him, or let him live as his loyal follower. The prince chooses the latter. The prince and his new vassals make their way to Gainsborough, where the Danish army is stationed. Then Canute, Asherad, and Thorfinn visit the king's hall. Canute is threatened by his father to take a small piece of land and live in peace, or die, but Asherad's way with words convinced the king to instead reward the prince for his distinguished service.
That don't mean he doesn't still want to kill him.
On their way into the harbor at York, the prince's body double is shot by a sniper, and Thorfinn takes care of him, by chance, right in front of old man Leif Erikson. Leif cries, having finally found the young boy of the man who saved his life, but he is sad to see what his path of revenge has turned him into. Thorfinn has no intention of returning home, but Leif promises to stay in town until he changes his mind. The assassination attempt, the ensuing rumors that it was ordered by the king, and letting Ragnar's brother Gunnar act as a spy for the king, are all part of Asherad's plan to have Canute usurp the throne. But before the important Imperial Council the next day, he has a couple of engagements to take care of. First, he stands off with Bjorn, who had already been dying from a wound he received when protecting the prince, and when Asherad delivers a fatal blow, he tells him that he was his only true friend. Next in line for a fight is Thorfinn, but he gets a beatdown from Asherad, who sees right through his attacks. The old warrior has a seat, and tells the son of Thors how to kill somebody you hate. He tells the story of his childhood, how he was raised by a slave woman who was very ill, and that one day he got the attention of his lord of a father, who took him into his home. After gaining the trust of everyone in the hall, he killed his father in his sleep, then let the blame fall to his half-brother. He calls Thorfinn an idiot for not being able to kill him after 10 years, and yet being so useful to him, a fact that stirs up emotions in the boy. Later that day, at the Imperial Council, the king grants the most bountiful land in England, Mercia, to Prince Canute, and just as Asherad believes everything is going his way, he is horrified at the next bit of news. The king announces their next campaign will be the conquest of Wales, and Floki notes Asherad's reaction to the news, as he racks his brain to find a way to save his motherland. Elsewhere, Thorfinn ends up in jail after causing trouble in town, but Leif visits him and bails him out, promising to take him to Vinland after they return home together. However, before they can settle down on the ship, Thorfinn disappears from Leif's sight again. Back at the banquet hall, Asherad is called up to receive his reward from King Sweyn, and he is compelled to convince him not to attack Wales, but to send him as his emissary instead. But the king whispers to him to choose between Canute or Wales, and much to everyone's surprise, the prince's vassal begins insulting him. He threatens his life before declaring himself to be Lucius Artorius Castus, the true king of Britannia, then slices off Sweyn's head. All the guards engage the so-called descendant of Arthur, but he fends them off madly, as Canute realizes that rather than choose between him or Wales, Asherad chose both, by taking sole blame for killing the king. He then does what he must, and stabs his former vassal, and Thorfinn panics, as the target of his rage for so many years begins to pass away. Whilst Thorfinn screams at him for dying, Asherad tells him to move on, and go beyond the world his father went, to become a true warrior. Canute apologizes to Thorfinn for stealing his prey from him, but the youngster swings for his head regardless. After he is subdued, the prince takes up the crown and announces himself as the ruler of England, whilst the son of Thors is dragged away, watching his one and only goal in life disappear. And that's the summary finish for Vinland Saga Season 1. Season 2 just came out. The first episode is out. I can't wait to see where the season goes, because last season I think was just absolutely fantastic. And if you thought this video was fantastic, like the video, you know what to do, comment, blah blah blah, subscribe, do whatever you want at the end of the day. But if you do all those things, I love you. With that being said, take it easy, catch you in the next video, which should be the special one, and peace.